Launched roller coasters are a critical part of the modern theme park lineup. Without them, our park just feels like it's missing something major. Of my 119 credits, 17 have featured some form of a launch. That's a bit over 14% of the coasters I've ridden. Now, today I'm going to rank the launches themselves, not the coaster as a whole, so let's dive in. Now, first things first, I haven't been able to get on Top Thrill Dragster yet due to maintenance issues on my first trip to Cedar Point, but I plan on fixing that this season. Now, let's start with some honorable mentions before the top 10. Timmy's Half-Pipe Havoc by Intamin is a pretty unique ride experience, but the slow build-up to the top speed hardly qualifies as a really great launch. However, if you do happen to be sideways when it kicks up on that last push through, you get some pretty great laterals, as it really yanks you up or down. Then there's Backlot Suncoaster, which I think is a pretty underrated family-sized coaster with some real intensity. The main launch is no different. When I rode this at King's Dominion, it genuinely surprised me at how much of a punch it has. Even if it doesn't quite make this list, it's still a great ride. Then we have one of the best indoor coasters out there in Revenge of the Mummy. Now, this launch isn't the strongest, but it benefits from the expert theming of the ride and that indoor setting. Now, it's one of the closer ones to the top 10, but it still doesn't quite make the list. Then we have Busch Gardens' replacement for the Big Bad Wolf, which is Verbolten. Now, this is a great ride. The launch into the show building is fun, and like Revenge of the Mummy, it has that theming element that really boosts it up. But again, simply not enough. Down in Florida, we can find the first of only 2 launched B&Ms. This ride, Incredible Hulk, features a tire drive launch system that shoots riders up an incline into a 0G roll. Now, it's another ride with amazing theming, but the tire drive system only goes 0 to 40 and just doesn't have that punch to really crack the list. Finally, to round out the honorable mentions is a pair of Skyrocket 2s, Phobia and Tempesto. Now, these rides are intense, but it's another rolling launch that isn't quite enough to crack this list. It's nothing against these rides, but I just think the launches aren't quite there. And as I say that, we have a rolling launch here at number 10. This one is Possessed at Dorney Park. Now, unlike the Half-Pipe and the Skyrocket 2 models, this just has more intensity. It tops out at 70 miles per hour, and these impulse models are always a lot of fun. Like the Skyrocket 2s, these can feel a bit like a flat ride, more than a roller coaster at times, but that being said, these are awesome rides, and those launches at that top speed are pretty intense. At number 9, similar to Possessed, we have Wicked Twister at Cedar Point, which is the world's largest impulse model currently, soon to be surpassed by another in China, but this ride hits 72 miles an hour through a multi-pass launch system. Now, topping out at over 200 feet, this is one of the more overlooked coasters in the park, but it still has a great set of launches. Next, we have Rock 'n' Roller Coaster at Disney's Hollywood Studios. While only going 0 to 57 in 2.8 seconds, an acceleration of about 20.4 miles per hour per second, the atmosphere really makes this ride and the launch. Between the Aerosmith blaring in your ears and the indoor setting, this is a really memorable moment. To be fair, this is the ride which it's been the longest since I've actually ridden. It's probably been about 17 years since I've gotten on it, but it's still just such a vivid memory. Another indoor launch from the 90s is Flight of Fear at King's Dominion. It tops out at about 54 miles an hour, and while that's the slowest top speed of the list, it still hits as hard as any we've seen so far. Not to mention, taking the launch in the darkness removes any real sense of speed, and I'm also a sucker for these launches that go directly out of the station. It just really builds up the anticipation for the ride as you wait in the queue and you wait to board. Following that up, we have the outdoor clone of Flight of Fear, Joker's Jinx at Six Flags America. Now honestly, the launch feels nearly identical, and while Flight of Fear features the theming, Joker still has the tunnel and it feels just a little bit smoother. Now, they're a complete toss-up to me, but for whatever reason, I remember Joker's hitting just a little bit harder. But then again, it was my first coaster of 2020 after a good amount of time, so maybe I just wasn't used to the forces like I was when I rode Flight of Fear. These next 5 are what I would consider really elite launches, and they're all extremely close. At number 5, we have the second launch out of the tunnel on Maverick back at Cedar Point. A really powerful LSM launch that sends trains up to 70 miles per hour before exiting the tunnel. While the momentum is killed by a set of trims really after that turn, it doesn't take away from the great launch, and it's really one of the high points of the ride. It has everything you want. It's an enclosed setting, it's got that punch, and it's really smooth. It loses some points for being a rolling launch slightly, but it is what it is. It isn't any higher because while it has the kick, it isn't really on that same tier of intensity as some of the next four. Number 4 is the new for 2019 TMNT Shellraiser at the American Dream Mall. Rolling into this launch, it hits 62.1 miles per hour in about 2 seconds. While that may be a somewhat slow top speed, this is really all about its intensity. Hitting those LSM fins is like a rocket boost, and it's really unexpected. It really slams you into the back of the seat. It's somewhere around 30 miles per hour per second because it's rolling and I'm not really sure the exact speed, but it really is one hell of an acceleration. The biggest surprise was how smooth it was, especially when compared to the rest of the ride, which features plenty of potholes and rough spots. It's a really great combination of just smoothness and intensity. So from intensity to perhaps the most intense launch I've actually experienced. Sandy's blasting Bronco is about as short as a launch can be. It's so short that the launch actually continues up the first element vertically. It only hits 47.8 miles per hour, but it does so in about 1.8 seconds, which would be about 26.5 miles per hour per second. It's less than TMNT Shellraiser, but I don't know, the pure impulse, the shortness feels like it's more. The real reason this sits at 3 is because you get the bonus of going to go forwards and backwards during the ride. The turntable flips the train after the first cycle before relaunching it through the course again. Now, at least when I went, there's a shake or a vibration that I experienced throughout the launch and the ride. It isn't really rough per se, it just feels like the train is almost like loose on the track, it just vibrates the whole time. But another benefit are the lap bars, which allow a lot of freedom to the riders. Now the rest of the ride may have disappointed me, but this is one of the best launches out there. Coming in at number 2, we have the world's tallest and second fastest coaster, King Dakar. Now, this intimate accelerator at Great Adventure hits 128 miles per hour in 3.5 seconds, which comes out to about 36.5 miles per hour per second. The sheer stats of this coaster are absolutely legendary, even if it's likely that it doesn't actually reach that max speed often. Now, the drawn-out launch makes it feel like you're getting melted against the seat over and over, and where Sandy's benefits from the short window, that impulse, Ka gets a bonus for the actual length of the launch. It doesn't die throughout the launch and it keeps up that intensity. Now after the catch car releases, it does coast for a little bit down the launch track before it turns up into that top hat, but it's still just amazing. Now overall this ride does have a shake throughout, especially in the back row, but the launch is so fast that it just deserves the number 2 spot, even with the glaring issue. Honestly, I just wish this thing had lap bars too, so you could have that freedom with that speed. Finally, topping the list is another intimate accelerator. This one is Storm Runner at Hershey Park. Now, this only hits 72 miles an hour in 2 seconds, but that's still about 36 miles per hour per second, which is nearly identical to King Dakar. While the length of the launch is much shorter, it has one benefit over Ka. It's so much smoother. Overall, this launch feels extremely similar in intensity, but it's really nice to be able to enjoy this in any seat in the train, especially in the back row. Similarly to Ka, I really wish this featured lap bars, especially with those awesome inversions later on, but this does have the comfier soft collars instead of those really annoying hard plastic straps that Ka features. Either way, you really can't go wrong with these hydraulic launches. They're really intense and they're great. And I fully expect Dragster to top this list once I get to ride it, but for now, it belongs to the underrated one at Hershey. An underappreciated element to a launch is that pre-launch delivery. There's something to it. Dragster has those drag lights going off, and Storm Runner has that really cheesy, deep movie trailer voice say, "Now get ready, here we go." So that's the whole list of all my favorite launches from all my launch coasters. Now, some are there because of the intensity or the overall speed, but all of them are fun elements. It really is one of the best coaster elements out there in my opinion. Now, what's your favorite launch, and is it a part of your favorite launch coaster? In my case, no. If you want more coaster content, feel free to check out my other videos on the channel, or make your way over to Island Coasters on Instagram. There you'll find that I post content daily. Now, till next week, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.